Hello everyone, thank you for joining us today. Today my guest is retired Corporal Larry Willis from the Bartow Police Department. We're going to talk about his son today. He's the father of Ryan Nichols, who has been incarcerated in the Polk County Jail here in Florida since December 1, 2011. Just hit the 10-year mark this past December 1, right Larry? Larry, I want you to please just introduce yourself. Tell us how long you worked in law enforcement, what different areas you worked in, where you started out, and the training you used to do.
Well, I started out in 1973 in Ohio, Lawrence County Sheriff's Department. I was there 3 years, and then I came to Florida, and I was out of law enforcement for about 8 years and got into the Department of Corrections in 1978. I worked with the Department of Corrections about 7 years, and then I hired on with the City of Bartow in 1995 and advanced to the position of corporal. And while with the department, I was the training officer, and also I was with the Polk Community College in the training academy, and I taught in all phases: high liability, firearms, defensive tactics, driving, in all phases of law enforcement. And I taught there for 14 years up till 2004. And I retired from Bartow Police Department in 2010, I think it was, 2008, and I stayed for 2 more years just to help out in training and vacations, and I left the department full-time in 2010.
Well, Larry, now your son has been in the Polk County Jail now. Actually, tomorrow, New Year's Day, will be 10 years and 1 month. Is that correct?
Exactly, yeah.
Now, your son is charged with second-degree murder with a firearm in the death of his girlfriend, Tanya Thomas, correct?
Yes.
But there are some extenuating circumstances in this case. He is claiming stand your ground and self-defense because there is more than one weapon involved in this case, correct?
Well, there's only a knife was, the victim was holding a knife when the police officers entered the trailer. And the first officer gave the victim a command to drop the knife twice. And then the officer on his radio said, "I'm stepping on the knife." And then the second officer, I was standing behind her, and she asked me to hold her flashlight as she was retrieving some gloves from her utility belt. And then she asked me to step back outside, and I stepped back out of the trailer. I entered the trailer only as a force of habit because of my position with the police department, and the 2 officers went in, and I had been their supervisor at one time, and I went back out of the trailer. But from what I observed, the victim, or from what I observed the officers stating, the victim was holding the knife, and then she removed the knife from the middle of her torso to the floor, where the first officer retrieved the knife from her hand.
Now let's people are probably asking right now, how'd you get on the crime scene? Did you get a call from your son?
Earlier, about 4 o'clock in the morning, he gave a call to my house. My wife answered the phone, and he was very distraught. You couldn't hardly understand what he was saying. But we got out of him that he had shot Tanya. Then the phone cut off. He called back. My wife gave me the phone. He told me he had shot Tanya. I told him to hang up, call 911, He hung up, then I called Bartow Police Department, informed them to send officers to the Peace River Mobile Home Park. Something had happened, my son was involved with it, and hung up from them. My wife and I then left our home and went to the Peace River Mobile Home Park.
As a father, your instinct is to get down there because this is your son calling. Is that correct?
Yes.
But you called the Bartow Police Department first and had them head over that way.
Yes, because I didn't know my son was even mentally capable of calling 911 and telling them what to do. So I called the police department to inform them, and they would get the EMS and police department en route to the scene.
And then you and your wife headed that way?
Yes, and my oldest son.
Okay. The agency that's conducting the investigation is the Bartow Police Department, correct?
Yes.
Same agency you retired from?
Yes.
Because you all live in this jurisdiction. They run that jurisdiction, correct?
Yes.
Who was the arresting agency?
Well, he turned himself in.
Later on?
Yeah. After we talked to an attorney, and they issued a warrant for his arrest several days after the incident. And once we were notified of the warrant, Nick turned himself in to the Polk County.
So he fled from the scene?
No, he didn't flee.
He didn't flee from the scene?
They released him.
They released him?
Yes.
Okay, let's make that clear then. The Bartow PD released him from the scene. He did not flee, he did not run.
Yes, because when the detective and his sergeant were leaving the scene, I asked the detective, "What do you think?" And the detective and the sergeant both said, "Looks like suicide or self-defense to me."
Now let me ask you something real quick here. These two officers that arrived on the scene, they're very critical, and I don't want to go over, I don't know what their testimony is, neither do you, but I'm just stating they're very critical to being witnesses in this trial if it ever comes up, correct?
The first two officers that arrived, yes.
Where are they today?
They are both deceased.
So both these officers are now deceased. So they cannot be called in to personally testify in the trial.
Yes.
Has your son's attorney, I'm sorry, because I know you speak with him, has he mentioned anything about any of their documents being able to come in as evidence, their reports?
No, he has not, but both of their reports state that the victim had the knife in her hand and laid it over into the floor.
We also know now that there was a fire at the Bartow Police Department.
Mm-hmm.
Do we know, or do you know, or does anybody know if any of the evidence was destroyed from your son's case at the Bartow Police Department?
From what I understand, some of it was destroyed.
And as of right now, it's not been exactly mentioned what evidence was destroyed.
As far as I know, it has not.
There's another piece of critical evidence that is no longer around anymore. I understand that the mobile home in which the incident took place is no longer available to be used as evidence. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
I guess last July, the investigator for the defense went into the mobile home, was taking pictures and looking around, and the ballistics expert requested to go in there. I think it was sometime in July or August, and they got permission from the prosecution, the state's attorney's office, to go in there and take additional pictures and videos. And prosecution, or state's attorney's office, gave him permission to go in there and take these videos and pictures. Well, when he went there, the mobile home, it's a one-bedroom mobile home, it was gone. And when it was looked into, the city of Bartow had issued a code enforcement permit to have the mobile home destroyed. The permit had not been signed. No one knows when or who issued the permit. No, there's no charge or who paid for the permit. Nothing about the permit has come to surface as far as who signed it, who issued, who paid for it. Nothing about it. But it just seemed just a coincidence. 2 days after the expert requested it, it just disappeared.
So now we have 2 witnesses that cannot come in. We have the mobile home itself is gone.
Right.
And things are just starting to add up. How many judges has your son gone through in this case?
I think it's 3 or 4.
Okay, and how many attorneys, state attorneys, have been assigned to your son's case?
Approximately 11.
So this case has changed hands over the years, over and over and over, between state attorneys and judges. Okay. Do you know if the state attorney has ever offered a plea deal to your son?
I think the subject has came up, but I don't think it's ever been brought up in a hearing to him, no.
There's been some appeals put in by your son, correct?
Yeah.
Did they go to the Supreme Court?
Yes.
Go ahead.
There was 2 stand your ground appeals put in, and one, the original stand your ground, which was denied. Then there was an appeal put in, and it was denied also.
Those appeals took up some of the time, but you don't believe they took up years of time, do you?
Oh, no. I think it was just a matter of 6 months at the most.
To get an answer from the
Yes.
Supreme Court.
Yes.
Okay. During the time that your son has been in jail, his mother passed, your wife, is that correct?
Yes.
And did your wife, his mother, get to see your son any time since he was put in jail?
No.
Where did your wife work at the time?
She was a secretary at Polk County Jail for one of the majors over the Department of Corrections.
So you retired from Bartow Police Department, and your wife worked for the Polk County Sheriff's Office.
Yes.
Have you had any contact at all with Tanya Thomas, the alleged victim, with her family at all?
No.
Do you know if they have been requesting to get this thing moving and get it forward and get it done with?
No, I do not.
None at all. No contact at all. Okay. Is this set for trial yet?
It's set for trial somewhere around the 22nd or 24th of January 2022.
So that, right now, tomorrow is January 1st. That will make it the case 10 years in 1 month. By the time it gets to trial, it'll almost be 10 years and 2 months before trial. So what are your feelings about this, and what are your thoughts about this taking so long, over a decade, to even make it to a trial?
Well, I don't think the state's attorney has been able to prove any of the elements of a second-degree murder charge in 10 years. There's got to be something wrong somewhere.
You feel if they had the proof, it would have been done and over with by now?
Oh yeah, I've talked to many attorneys outside of Polk County about this case and what's going on, and they say there is no reason whatsoever that this case should have gone more than 3 years at the most.
And you involve or include the witnesses that are no longer available, the missing evidence, and there's one more piece of evidence, right? Your son's evidence on the knife. It was sent to FDLE Laboratory, the Florida Department of Law Enforcement.
Yes, they back in 2014, it was sent to Department of Law Enforcement for a DNA evaluation, and because the state attorney said that they were trying to prove that he set the scene up to look like self-defense, and they sent the knife off for evaluation, and it came back from DNA, or from the FDLE, that his DNA was not on the knife at all.
So there are a lot of loopholes in this case, a lot of evidence no longer available, a lot of evidence that has been tested that seems to not coincide with some of the state's determination. In all fairness to both sides, to the victim's family and your family, do you feel that over a decade for both sides, you know, the mother and father of Tanya and you, the father for your son, that this has just been a torturing event for everyone?
Exactly. I was a firearms instructor for 15 years, and I know what the devastation is from the bullet of this caliber and the wound that it presents from 18 to 24 inches. And there was no exit wound in the victims. And the ballistics expert in his report, which is public knowledge, that the bullet ricocheted off of the floor, and a projectile from that ricochet is what hit the victim. That's why there's no exit wound.
That's pretty important to the case, that the bullet did not go direct into the defendant, that we know of.
Yes, and that shows that Nick did not aim the weapon at her. He just picked it up and fired it. He didn't know where the bullet went.
Well, this is going to be tough on both sides for all family members. It's gone on way too long, and let's hope in January that the trial does not get continued again.
Oh, yes.
I wish you the best, Larry, and thank you for talking to me about this, and we'll stop there and let the justice system hopefully take its course this time around, and we're not into the middle of another decade before this is over.
Let's pray to God it's not.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you, buddy.
Take care.